So I wanted to kind of begin by just honoring kind of why I'm here. Yeah. Why have I chosen to be here this evening? Why have I chosen to speak to you? Actually, to anyone who will listen to me a lot of the time this evening. And that is to give voice to what is happening in Palestine in particular, also in Israel, and in particularly in the West Bank, which is where most of my involvement has been, as well as in Gaza. I hope that I can offer some insights into what is going on, why it's going on, what are the kind of dynamics that are at play, both politically, geopolitically, but even more because of my particular take as a meditator and a teacher of meditation, kind of what we can understand about our own psyche and the human psyche, and those aspects of humanity that are at play and are actually here in each of us, as well as in what we see out in the world. And I also want to touch on to explore possible ways that we can affect change, that we can create change, both in our immediate experience and how we meet what is happening and how we hold it in ourselves and in our communities and also in the world, with that deep wish to work towards peace and justice for all beings. As I mentioned, I'm a long-term meditator and I teach meditation in the Buddhist tradition, where our aspiration is to live in a world that is safe, and peaceful for all beings, and that is a guiding light for my life, certainly. I'm also very much here as to speak on behalf, to be a vehicle, to be a voice for those who cannot be here and speak to us. So my many close brothers and sisters in Palestine, also friends, family in Israel, all those who are living through what we can only term as a nightmare for the last 6 months and longer, of course, and all those that are doing everything they can to stay in touch with their own humanity and the humanity of others, and that are supporting each other and working really tirelessly for change and for a better future, even when it feels sometimes very difficult to see how that is going to come about. So I just want to say a little bit about myself and why I was invited to speak about this subject, just to kind of, I know you've maybe read what the poster said and the website said, but a little bit more. I grew up in Jerusalem to a Jewish Israeli family. On one side of my family, my grandparents escaped Germany in the 30s. On the other side, I'm 7th generation, born in whatever you want to call that part of the world. Palestine, Palestina, British Mandate, Palestine, Israel, got many, many names. I've been aware of the occupation and protesting and working to end the occupation of Palestinians since I was 12, so 40 years, practically. This month it'll be 40 years. And since 2006, that work has taken a very particular form of bringing internationals and Israelis into Palestine for solidarity work and to kind of come closer to the situation on the ground, what the occupation looks like, what the reality of Palestinians' life under occupation is like. And we do it as part of our meditation practice. We call it being peace. And very much the kind of exploration is how can we bring the qualities that we cultivate on the meditation cushion, like peace, like compassion, like capacity to listen, how we can bring them into the kind of acute oppression and suffering in the West Bank in a way that is both supportive for those there, that affects change, and that deepens our own understanding. And one of the slogans we use is a quote from Gandhi, be the change you want to see in the world. Yeah, so that's very much our practice. So we've been doing it since 2006. We started around the olive harvest, where Palestinians have issues accessing their olive groves safely. And over time that's expanded and extended, and we bring particularly Israelis also for shorter times throughout the year, both for agricultural work and other ways of support. We've been working primarily in one area of the West Bank. So over this time, from 2009, we started in 2006 in a different area, since 2009 working in one particular area, 3 villages, but working for an extended period of time and regular contact over such a long time really built a friendship and a mutual support network. So when people in the village have an issue, they have people to turn to. And over time, a network of support of Israeli activists and meditators in particular. So we began with agricultural and land access issues. Over time, that's expanded, support with permits, and kind of this will come up. Palestinians need a permit to get into Israel, whether it's for work, whether it's to get medical treatment, in cases where there isn't adequate medical treatment in Palestine, for various other reasons. Often there's issues. Yeah, so someone may, for example, may be having chemotherapy for cancer. They won't get a permit that covers the whole course of chemotherapy. And so it can be that suddenly no permit, chemotherapy appointment, and kind of a lot of stress and distress, as we can imagine, on top of what we would normally have in that situation. And so we have been able many times to help with that. So that's just a little example. We also, just kind of giving you an overview of everything we've done over the years, and then we'll get to kind of what's happening now. We also founded a scholarship fund for students who study in Palestine. I think that was in 2018, if I'm correct, and have been supporting quite a few students. There is a real aspiration in Palestinian society to study, and it's incredibly expensive, particularly in comparison to the incomes. Yeah, so that has been a real source of support as well. And during COVID, we also organised support through food parcels. Yeah, we all remember that happened here as well. It was very, very essential in Palestine at the time because the reserves are so low. So the particular area that we work in is called the Salfit Governorate of Palestine. It's not far from Nablus. That's one of the large cities that people may be more familiar with. It's in the center of the West Bank. It takes, when there's no traffic, 30 minutes to drive from our village, yeah, our home, in Palestine to Tel Aviv. Yeah, just to give you an indication, a 30-minute drive. That's all it takes when there's no traffic to get from Tel Aviv to this area. This means that it's a very, very popular area for Jewish settlements, yeah, because they can commute very, very easily. So there's many, many settlements there. If we go back to, when we started going there in 2009, and until very, very recently, these were considered very moderate settlements. Yeah? So not the ones where there is active violence against Palestinians, as in physical violence. There's a lot of other forms of violence that are happening, yeah? From just fences, restrictions to access to land, inequality. There's just countless daily acts that we say violence, but in this particular area, it's considered moderate as far as the Jewish settler population and moderate as far as the Palestinian population. So it's not an area where there has been a lot of violence like shooting. Yeah, there is stone throwing and things like that has always been around. So this is kind of the long-term history, and I want to get to the last 6 months. In October, myself, my partner Nathan, who many of you know, born and bred in Bridport. He's the reason I'm here. We were, on October 7th, we were just outside Tel Aviv in my mother's house, preparing for the olive harvest, which was starting that week. Woke up 6:30 in the morning from the sirens in the next town, and kind of what's going on, then heard them in our town. That was the beginning of October 7th. Initially assumed this was, we've lived through previous attacks of Israel on Gaza and missiles from Gaza to Israel, assumed this would be the same thing. Through that day, it became clear that it wasn't. Because, and this is really important, we were supposed to begin the olive harvest on Wednesday that week. So 4 days later, we had a whole bunch of internationals that were supposed to come. We kept our options open until we understood what was happening. And basically what happened was all the international flights got cancelled. Internationals couldn't come. The Israelis were either directly impacted by the attack on October 7th or impacted, like Israelis were impacted by just the kind of horror, fear that was triggered in a very, very strong way. And so we had the flexibility to completely change our plans. And this goes back to this kind of friendship that we have with the village. Other organizations who are much bigger, have worked for longer, much better, much more established than we are, have bigger budgets and employees, we're all volunteers, kind of put the olive harvest support on pause because both their Palestinian partners were telling them, don't come, we don't know if it's safe, and Israeli people were afraid to go. So they had that dual situation. For us, we knew that we could go with individual long-term friends that would tell us if we were safe or not, and we could trust them because we've been in those situations before. And so instead of having a 2-week harvest where we stayed in the village, because this our friends told us not to do, they said, we don't know if you can bring Israelis here right now to sleep. We just don't know. And so instead of staying in the village and doing the 2 weeks like we usually do, we just went in and out, as I said, 30-minute drive from Tel Aviv every day with whoever would come with us. So Nathan, who's just walking in, and myself, and then whoever could join us that day would come along, working with different farmers through the 2 weeks. It was very clear pretty quickly that the situation had changed. The amount of settler attacks grew exponentially, both in the how many attacks there were and the degree of violence. In our particular area, again, it was relatively less than in other areas, but we were facing an armed settler. This happened, someone with a machine gun coming and threatening us to leave the land, interactions with soldiers on a daily basis, a lot of things that we had not seen to that degree before. Our practice, I'll just come back to that, meditation practice and the clarity of intention was very, very important. Allowed us to stay really steady, really in tune with our intention and with the friendships that we'd built over the years. And that sense of mutual trust, I have to really go back to that, how important that was for everyone involved. And a lot of the time, just like in previous years, when we were actually out in the olive groves, some of the time it was completely different, and at other times it was like it had always been. Especially at times when they felt safe enough to bring the women and the children out. Sometimes it was just the men. And then it just like, this magical experience of being in the olive groves and that dropping away of identity, Israeli, Palestinian, just people coming together to work together for the kind of world they want to see. I just want to kind of stay with this particular time when an armed settler came to the olive harvest. It was a Saturday, and most of the settlements around in this area are religious, so they observe the Sabbath, which means there's a lot less traffic on the roads. And so this was the day that many of the farmers who had not felt safe to harvest near the roads, they were harvesting in the further groves or the groves that were close to the village, felt safe to go onto on the land that's on the road. And there's a lot of land on the road, and there were a lot of olives on those trees. And so there were a lot of farmers working along in the groves on the roads. Unfortunately, already on our way there, we got a phone call. I got a phone call telling me that there was a friend of ours who'd been working with a friend of his. They had gotten attacked by a settler. There was another attack not far. Again, they were relatively mild, but people had gotten injured. So when we arrived, we were kind of more alert, and we chose to work in the kind of most central location, so right on a junction. So we were kind of covering two roads by being there, and we were also with a family that was the most vulnerable. And it kind of passed relatively quietly. There weren't Israeli cars passing. And after a few hours, we stopped for food. Traditional hospitality, even in these conditions, is there. We were sitting in the shade quite further in from the road, and we were sitting with a family I know for a long time, the elderly couple, the older couple, not elderly, they're only a little bit older than me, the sister of the man, and the son, who's in his 30s, a father himself, with his friend, was sitting a bit further away. And suddenly these two younger men, we just finished eating, we were about to have tea, these two younger men shot up and ran towards us. And we're saying in Arabic the word for settlers, which is mustawdinin, it's infiltrators. And they were hiding behind us, two grown men in their 30s, the most vulnerable to violence. The young men, they're the most vulnerable to violence. So they were hiding amongst the five, I think there were 5 of us, internationals and Israelis there. They were hiding amongst us. We immediately got up and started kind of running towards the road, towards where this person was coming from, and calling out to them in Hebrew, hey, hello, how can we help you? So this is really important. In that moment we may feel, this is something, a training, I may feel, anger, outrage, that they're there, but my role in that situation is to prevent violence, and to protect the people that I'm with, because they are more vulnerable than I am, much more vulnerable than I am. And so running towards him and calling out, hello, in Hebrew, can we help you? And I just want to kind of take a moment with him. It was one man, machine gun and a vest. Very military looking, but not military. Very, very agitated. Very, very agitated. And very distraught. And therefore, I would say also quite dangerous because of that combination. And so what we were doing was just trying to bring him down and calm him down, and asking, what do you want, And what he wanted in that moment, there was a Palestinian car. The young men had come in a car, and it was parked there by the road on their land. And he said, the car is not allowed to be here. They have to go. And again, in that moment, doesn't matter who's right and who's wrong. In that moment, our role is to protect. And so the young men were very happy to drive the car away and to get out of there. I went with them, and the others calmed this guy down. Luckily for us that day, he called the soldiers, the army came, and as had happened earlier that day, they actually told him that he couldn't be there and he had to leave rather than us and the farmers, so we could carry on. Now that it's a rare occurrence and has gotten more and more rare as these months have unfolded. I want to just say a little bit about Israeli society, because we can't talk about Palestine without talking about what's happening to Israel, in Israel to Israelis. And we can kind of look in the big picture. In 1967, when Israel occupied the West Bank, the Gaza Strip, and the Golan Heights. There was one philosopher called Yeshayahu Leibovich. He's very well known in Israel. He's not known, I think, externally. He said at that time in 1967, occupation destroys the occupier. Yeah? If Israel continues with the occupation, it will be Israel that is going to be destroyed. And he was talking about moral, ethical destruction. So he was very aware at that time already of the huge impact that this would have on Israeli society, and through my lifetime I've witnessed it. The destruction, you cannot kind of send your young men and women to occupy and dehumanize another people and expect that not to have an effect on your own society. And if I just touch on, I know there's some practitioners here on Buddhist philosophy that would go along with that completely, I think, as well as most spiritual traditions in the world. You know, that what we do impacts our hearts and minds and impacts our own lives. It cannot be separated. Yeah, it cannot be that we act in one way in one place and that doesn't impact on our society. So this slippery slope that has been impacting Jewish Israeli, we have to say, because there's also Palestinian Israelis, Jewish Israelis, over the years since 1967, kind of fast forwarded to an incredible degree on October 7th and since. October 7th was incredibly traumatic event. I know that many people here also experienced that trauma, even with no relationship to Israel or Jewish history or to Palestine even. But within Israel, it was like a button was pushed and trauma was activated on multiple levels: personal, generational, collective, and because the kind of violence has been so ongoing, because Israel declared war, because the media and the government in Israel are constantly replaying the events of October 7th and of the war since then, of kind of what's happening to Israeli soldiers in Gaza since then, the trauma is constantly being reactivated. And I'll also say that many of us know this here. The current government in Israel is the most extreme fundamentalist government that's ever been in Israel. There's actually not a lot of difference between some of the members of the government and their ideology and the ideology that the Hamas has. It's very, very, very close. Yeah, supremacy, dehumanization of the other. And that is all, of course, these parts of the government, they're all settlers. So the settler community has kind of evolved very, very strongly through the occupation. And just to say that, my experience of Jewish Israeli society and Palestinian Israeli society in a different way is that they're both in deep crisis. Yeah? People are broken in Israel on various levels. If they care, if they have a moral compass that is still functioning, they are feeling helpless and completely impacted by what is going on. They're also working very, very hard. I come from a family of medical professionals and therapists. They are all working since October 7th, super overtime. And so they're also very much drained. For others, that sense of, again, if we go back to that quote that I said from 1967, the kind of armoring and dehumanizing of the other, there's a really very high toll that people are paying for that as well. And the fragmentation within the society, which started before October 7th, is also much worse. And just to add to the brokenness and tiredness and exhaustion, of course, the liberal pro-democratic aspect of Israel's society was in a very, very intense battle for democracy. I'm saying that with a caveat, democracy for Jews, for the 10 months or 11 months preceding October 7th, since this government came into power. So people were already very tired from this mass protest movement. And right now, brokenness and trauma. At the moment, there's a revival, and we'll have to see what's happening. At the moment, people are finding their alignment, their ethical compass, their feet, their voices a little bit more, but it's still very, very hard. I want to say a little bit about the changes. I've touched on it quite a bit in Palestine, particularly in the West Bank and in Gaza over the last 20 years or so. So there's always been restrictions on movement, restrictions on land access, and that has gotten progressively worse over the years. What the Israeli military and the settlers could get away with has really changed over time. So when we started working in Palestine in 2006, there was a sense of Palestinians had rights, even if they were infringed on, they still had some rights. For example, they had the right to harvest their olives. That is disappearing over time. And currently, since October 7th, the restrictions on movement and on land access are extreme. A very large percentage of Palestinians worked in Israel prior to October 7th. That was the number one income, was work within Israel. On October 7th, all work permits were revoked, and they have not been reinstated until now. So a very large part of the population lost their job. Israel controls the taxation of the Palestinian Authority. This is really complex. There's all kinds of very, very complex relationships between these two entities. The tax that Palestinians pay goes via Israel. And so Israel has been blocking the tax money from going to the Palestinian Authority, which means the Palestinian Authority, who is the second largest employer after Israel, has not been able to pay their workers properly since October 7th. That means nurses, doctors, teachers, council workers, we know, everything that tax pays for. And so all those working in Israel lost their jobs. People who work for the Palestinian Authority are still working but not getting paid, or only getting paid a very small percentage of their earnings. Other people are losing their jobs because they can't move around. There's restrictions. If you work in a town that's 40 minutes drive from your village, you will think twice about going there. If you work in sales or anything like that, which means that you have to move around from village to village, you won't be able to do that. So a lot of people are losing their jobs that way. And because the Israeli economy is really affected by the decisions of the Israeli government, that impacts the Palestinian economy as well. So Palestinian industry relies on selling to Israel. And because the Israeli economy is impacted, then their Palestinian industry is also really impacted. And so this situation, and now has been going on for 6 months, even people who had savings are starting to really, really struggle. I mentioned the military and settler violence have gone up to an incredible degree in the area that we're working in. There was a new settlement, an outpost, which means one settler comes and sets up a settlement on a piece of land. This happened last summer, before October 7th. Once they come, they get protected by the Israeli military. This is kind of how it's all worked forever. They get protected by the Israeli military. Because the soldiers need to be there, they get connected to water and electricity. And then eventually they get a road, and then eventually they get caravans, and then eventually the place grows. Now, we could say, okay, there's just one person. It doesn't matter. It's somebody's private land, but it's only one person. How much space do they take? A lot. A lot. This means that all the farmers with land adjacent to that area now don't have access to their land. And this has gotten progressively worse. So this was already during the olive harvest. the farmers who had land in this whole area around this outpost, which had been there since June, were told they couldn't go there, and the army destroyed their access road. Yeah? So the settlers have a road from a settlement. Palestinians, the road from their village was destroyed. If they go there, the army comes, there's a drone patrolling, the army comes and arrests them or tells them they have to go. So it's their Israeli friends who are going to once in a while just to tell them what's happening on their land. And I have to say how heartbreaking it is. One of our closest friends, this is his family's land. It's a plot that he has cultivated for 15 years. He's got vines and olives. They're just now coming into serious crop. This was his escape because it's an area that up till this one settler arrived didn't have any settlements nearby, and it was a place that he could go and feel space. And now he has no access to it whatsoever. Every once in a while he climbs a hilltop and just looks over it from a distance. Yeah? And that's his reality. There's a whole other area which has been contested for a long time where again the Palestinian farmers are not allowed to come. Yeah? When they go there, the army comes and tells them you can't be there. The army won't let the Israeli volunteers be there. If they contest, then the army declares it a closed military zone, which means only settlers can be there and military. Not, and this is kind of, we're starting to see this kind of dual system. Jewish Israelis who are settlers can be there. Jewish Israelis who are human rights activists cannot be there. This is kind of part of the reality. The number of Palestinians killed, injured, arrested has gone up incredibly since October 7th. The conditions of Palestinians who are in Israeli prisons and jails is horrific. And I'm kind of seeing your faces, and I think I need to pause because I'm telling you such horrible things. And I know it's not easy to just kind of hear it and take it in and hold it. And so just kind of inviting us to breathe. So over the last few days, I've been speaking to some of my friends in Palestine, which I do very regularly, especially since October 7th. And I told them I was going to talk in my town today. And I said to them, is there something you'd like me to say on your behalf? So one of my friends said, just tell them what our life looks like, which I think I have already, and I won't go into more details. Another one of our friends told me, can you please tell them that we're not giving up? Yeah. Can you please tell them that we're not giving up? This is our land, this is our home, and we're not giving up. And a third friend of mine wanted you to know that it matters to her, that you know what's happening and that you care about her and the other people in Palestine. So those are the things that they asked me to say on their behalf. Since October 7th, so much of our work has been about this. So in December, over Christmas and New Year's, I went back to Israel and Palestine. It wasn't my plan originally before October 7th, but I felt like I wanted to be there with my friends. And a lot of what we were doing during that month that I was there was just coming to be with our friends and doing things together. Yeah, so a lot of it, some of it was going out to the land, and they felt a lot safer with Israelis with them. And some of it was cooking together and them teaching us to identify mushrooms and to cook and to do things that they know how to do so well. And we also started our food box project I think it was in December, I can't remember now, which I think was one of the links that were on the website, to collect donations abroad, mostly also in Israel, and then to make food boxes in the village and distribute them to families that are really struggling. When we started in December, There were 50 families on the list. Now for Ramadan, there's 145. So as I said, the situation is getting more difficult. But the other thing that's happening is that the communities are also really rallying. And it was very moving that the villages, we were doing the food boxes for quite some time and did a few rounds. And then people in the village said, we want to give also. And so they're also organizing. And they formed a committee which is keeping in touch with families discreetly to know what the situation is and who needs help. So they're really mobilizing. And also in these two areas where there are restrictions on land access, the farmers in those areas have formed associations now to support each other to have access to the land. So I know I've been speaking for a while, I'm sorry. It's difficult to stop me once I start, but I want to touch on what I said I would touch on, which is, is change possible? Is change possible, and how can we contribute to that? And again, one thing that spiritual teachings, and particularly Buddhist teachings, remind us of is that yes, change is possible because it happens all the time. Yeah, change is always happening, and as beings living in this world, we can do what we can to affect the change to go in particular directions. And even now with the horrors, the kind of unimaginable horrors of what is happening in Gaza and the difficulties in the West Bank, the fact that the realities of the occupation are exposed, that actually the world is seeing, and we're talking about the majority of the world, if we ignore the governments and we think about the people, across the globe, people are seeing, people are aware, and people care, to a great degree. And that is something to kind of get some strength from. Of course, we would not choose that this is the way it would happen, but that is something, and a lot of Palestinians are feeling for the first time actually seen. Actually seen. And they're also able to know the difference between the actions of governments and the wishes of the people. So, for example, the protests, around the world are very much supportive to people in Palestine. They see it, they know it's happening, and they know that there's so many people in the world that are supporting them. It's also really interesting on a geopolitical level because, of course, what's happening in Palestine and Israel is so connected to the rest of the world. We have kind of the whole colonial imperialist history at play. We have the whole white and non-white aspects at play. All of this is being played out right now. And we have the big players, the US, Russia, Iran, Europe. They're all kind of playing a part. They all have interests in what is happening. I have a few good friends that I grew up with. One in particular is one of the most senior human rights lawyers in Israel. I have a couple like that, but when I met with him in January, we had a coffee in Tel Aviv, which is it's a crazy thing to do in this kind of reality, but we have coffees in Bridport as well. So we met for coffee in Tel Aviv, and we were talking about the situation, and he said to me, and he is one of the people that the American embassy gets their information from about what is happening. And he said to me, we've never been so close to a Palestinian state. We've never been so close to a Palestinian state as we are right now. We are also very, very far. It feels so far, but it's the closest we've ever been, and there is a real chance, because of this awareness, because of this awareness that the world has, that this cannot continue, that this cannot continue anymore. And so the last kind of thing to say, is yes, we need to keep doing what we're doing. And I know a lot of people here are doing many different things in our own way, signing petitions, donating money, writing to our wonderful MP in West Dorset, perhaps. if you haven't given up on him yet. We're doing what we can, and that matters. You have to keep doing. You have to keep that kind of heart alive that is also acting. Yeah, because it goes back to this quote, what we do makes a difference. It makes a difference to our own integrity and our own sense of power, but it also makes a difference to the world. Yeah, what is the world that we live in? It's made up of individual people. And so what we do does really matter. And I kind of really, and the thing I remind myself, and these are hard times. It's been 6 months. It's been really hard. And there's some days, some nights when I can't sleep at night because I think about Gaza. Yeah. And there's times when I speak to friends in Palestine or in Israel, and the heart is really heavy. But kind of every time I gather myself because we have to. Yeah? And we can use the kind of where we live, the beauty of the nature here, the support that we have, the fact that we live in such a special place, that has so many good things in it to support us, to nourish us, so that we can do the things that need to be done also to impact those that are far away from us. And how we do this is incredibly important, And kind of, for me again, the spiritual teachings, the how we do this is so important. And if we can keep our hearts steady and not fall into hatred when we want to bring the end of hatred. And it's so hard to do, but that is sometimes it feels like the most important work, because if we go into hatred, then we're just perpetuating the thing that we want to change. And so that's kind of our deep mission, I feel, for those who can stay steady, to be for peace, to be for justice, to be for safety for all. So I think just the last thing to say before I open to questions. On Wednesday, Nathan and I have the great privilege to be going back to Palestine and Israel until Nathan's going to be there for 4 weeks, and I'm going to be there until the end of May to continue our work, hopefully to bring some of the nourishment from this beautiful part of the world to that very tender part of the world. And so in that way also, just to say, like this evening, the knowing of the kind of sanity in Bridport is supporting us to go there as well. And so just to share that with you, and to thank you for your listening. Very, very much from the depth of my heart.